Wyoming Territory, 1887. He almost drove past her. Caleb Merritt had been pushing his mare Dusty hard since the wind turned cold at dusk, leaning into the gusts with the specific resolve of a man who had 3 miles left between himself and a warm stove and intended to cover them fast. The road had frozen into ruts that jolted the wagon with every turn. The sky had gone the color of iron an hour before sunset, and the first snow of the season was starting to fall, thin and sideways. He saw her at the edge of the tree line, a shape that didn't belong to the landscape, too upright for a stump, too small for a horse. He pulled Dusty to a stop. A woman, standing with her shoulders curled against the wind in the posture of someone who had been walking against the cold for a long time and stopped pretending it was temporary. Her coat was thin and her boots were cracked at the toe. She was holding something wrapped in a faded quilt against her chest. "Ma'am," he called down. She looked up. Her face was pale with cold, her eyes sharp with the wary alertness of a woman alone on a road at dusk. "I'm fine," she said. It wasn't true. "Snow's coming and the temperature's dropping fast." He nodded at the bundle. "Is that a child?" "My son. He's fine." Caleb thought of his mother, who used to say a closed door in winter was the same as turning your back on a person. He moved over on the bench. "Get up. I've got a house 2 miles on, a stove, and more food than one man needs." She hesitated, weighing him the way a person weighs a stranger when they have nothing left to lose, but still have everything to protect. "I don't know you," she said. "No, but you've got a baby and it's about to snow." He held out his hand. "Caleb Merritt." She looked at the road ahead, disappearing into the gray. Then she took his hand. Her name was Rosalind Hale. Her son, 5 months old, was named Wesley. By the time they reached the farmhouse, the snow had thickened into a real storm, and Wesley had started to fuss against the cold that had crept through the quilt. The house had been built for 2 and lived in by 1 for 4 years. Rosalind noticed it the way she noticed most things, quickly, quietly, filing it away. A single chair pulled from the table, 1 coat on 2 hooks, a dresser with a hairbrush still sitting on it that clearly belonged to no one currently living there. She said nothing. She laid Wesley on the spare bed and unwrapped him, checking his color, his breathing, the way a mother learns to check without being taught. He looked back at her with the open, unbothered curiosity of a baby who trusted that whatever was wrong would be handled. Caleb built up the fire without being asked. He set a pot of stew warming, nothing elaborate, just barley and the last of a rabbit he'd shot that morning. When Rosalind came into the kitchen with Wesley on her hip, she looked at the pot, then at the room, with the same quiet inventory she'd done everywhere else. "Can I help?" she said. "It's stew, doesn't need 2 people." She said, "Everything needs 2 people, 1 to stir, 1 to watch it doesn't burn." He handed her the spoon. They ate at the table, the fire loud against the wind outside, and Wesley sat in Rosalind's lap watching Caleb with the unblinking focus babies give to new faces. Caleb watched him back with the careful, guarded expression of a man unused to letting himself feel anything around a child. "He's looking at you like he's deciding something," Rosalind said. "What's he deciding?" "Whether you're worth the attention." She almost smiled. "He doesn't look at walls." The fever came at 2 in the morning. Rosalind woke to Wesley burning against her side, the dry, papery heat that told her this was serious, but not yet the worst kind of serious. She went for water and found Caleb already up, still in his day clothes, having slept in the chair by the fire out of habit more than plan. He didn't ask questions. He built the fire higher and brought water without being told twice. He sat in the corner while she worked, cool cloths, quiet nursing, the long vigil of watching it. Small chest rise and fall. Something crossed his face in the lamplight that he managed before it could fully arrive. She recognized it.
grief that had found a door left open. "You don't have to stay up," she said near 3. "I'm fine in the chair," he said, and didn't move. She understood, in the way one loss sometimes recognizes another, what it cost him to sit there. She didn't ask about the second coat hook that had no coat, or the small cradle she'd spotted in the front room, dusted, empty, clearly built for a child who had never used it. By dawn, the fever had broken. She made biscuits with what she found in his pantry, the way you thank a man without making him sit through the thanking of it. The days took a shape neither of them discussed out loud. Caleb worked the land. Rosalind ran the house, properly, the way someone who understood provisioning ran a house, not performing it. He reorganized his shelves. He found the coffee moved to a dry corner and stood confused in front of the pantry for 10 seconds before he found it. He said nothing. The next week, he found the salt without looking. On the 4th evening, by the fire, she told him why the shirt cuff she was mending had a story behind it. She'd been a seamstress in Ohio before she married. He told her the horse was named Dusty because she'd been the color of a dust storm the day he bought her. He wasn't a complicated man about names. Wesley came in May. I almost named him June for the month I first felt him move, but May felt more honest. He watched Wesley on the blanket, absorbed in the discovery of his own fists. "What's he working out?" "Who he is," she said. "The hands are just where he started." On the 6th evening, Caleb came back from town with a small knitted cap sized for an infant in a Wyoming winter and set it on the table without a word. "You didn't need to," Rosalind said.
"He was cold on the porch yesterday." "Next time," she said, holding his eyes, "ask me. I know what he needs." "You're right," he said. "I will." She told him the rest on the 8th night, after she'd caught him noticing her watch the road twice that morning. Her husband, Thomas Hale, had died of fever 6 weeks after Wesley was born. They'd owned a small parcel of land outside Millfield, Ohio, good water access, the kind of land Thomas's older brother, Silas, had wanted for 8 years before Thomas ever bought it. Silas had paid for the funeral when Rosalind didn't have the money ready, and had used that debt as the first thread of a claim that a young widow with an infant and no income was unfit to hold property, unfit to raise the boy alone. He'd filed a petition with the county magistrate, a man who owed his position in no small part to Silas's family. The petition hadn't been heard. Rosalind hadn't waited to find out how it would go. She'd sold what she could carry, no further wait for, taken a train as far west as her money allowed, then a stage, then her own feet. "Thomas left that land to Wesley and me," she said. "Silas paid for a coffin. He didn't buy my son with it." Caleb was quiet, turning it over. "Does he know which way you went?" "Not exactly. He'll work west eventually." "A petition that hasn't been heard carries no weight here. This is Sweetwater County, different territory entirely. Our Justice of the Peace, Amos Whitfield, I've known him 15 years. Let me talk to him before anyone else does." "Caleb, you don't have to." "I know," he held her gaze. "Let me anyway." Silas Hale arrived 11 days later with 2 men and a folded document, asking questions at the general store about a woman traveling alone with a baby. By then, Caleb had already sat with Amos Whitfield and laid it out plainly: the marriage, the death, the funeral debt turned into leverage. The unheard petition filed 1,000 miles from where he stood. Amos had listened, then said what mattered. An unheard petition from Ohio carried no force in Wyoming territory, and he wouldn't honor it without Rosalind's own testimony first. She gave it the next morning, clearly, without embellishment, the way a woman puts down something she's been carrying for a long time, in the right place at last. When Silas rode up to the farmhouse that afternoon, Rosalind was already on the porch, Wesley on her hip. She didn't hide. Caleb stood in the yard, not in front of her, beside her. "That's my brother's wife, my brother's son. My name is Rosalind," she said, coming down the steps.
Thomas knew the difference. So do you. Her voice didn't waver. You paid for a coffin. You didn't buy my son with it. If you have a claim, take it to Amos Whitfield properly. That's the only process I'll answer to. Silas looked at the two men who'd come with him, men who'd agreed to escort a document, and had just watched the document meet a woman who understood exactly what it was and wasn't. He got back in the wagon. He didn't return. That evening, with Wesley asleep and the fire burning low, Caleb told her about Anna. 14 years on that same land, the pregnancy that seemed like everything finally arriving, and the October night 4 years back when the baby came too early. About the boy they'd named Elijah, and the hours between his arrival and his leaving. About Anna not surviving the same night. About the cradle in the front room that he'd never been able to put away, because putting it away had felt like a decision he hadn't made yet. The 3rd year, he said, I started waking up earlier, 5 instead of 6, kept getting earlier every week. Why? Didn't know at the time, he said, looking at the fire. Felt like something was coming I didn't want to miss. Rosalind was quiet a long moment. Then she stood, went to the front room, and came back. Wesley could sleep in the cradle, if you want him to.
Caleb didn't move for a long moment. Then he got up, took a small folded blanket from the chest, and set it inside the cradle himself. They married in the spring in the small Sweetwater church, with the last snow still sitting on the far ridgeline and the valley greening up below it. Rosalind wore blue, the same color she'd been wearing on the road the night Caleb found her. Wesley, walking now, took 2 unsteady steps down the aisle and sat down deliberately, as if to make sure everyone had seen it. Amos Whitfield sat in the second pew. Afterward, Caleb found him in the churchyard. "Your father would have liked this," he said. "I know," Caleb answered. That November, with the accounts open on the table and Wesley long asleep, Rosalind looked up from her ledger. "If it's a boy, I'd like to call him Elijah, not to replace anyone, because the name still belongs in this house." Caleb was still for a long moment, looking at the empty space beside the cradle where a second one might someday sit. "Yes, it does." Some storms don't arrive to take something from you. Some arrive to finally deliver what you'd stopped believing was coming. What is significant or educational about this story, it shows that grief and hope can occupy the same house without canceling each other out. That healing doesn't mean forgetting what was lost, but making room for what still might come. It's also a quiet reminder that kindness offered without conditions to a stranger on a cold road can change the direction of more than one life at once.